Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Ingerman, and welcome to the Shamans Cave.
And I'm Renee Baribeau, and we're really happy to be here with you today. And we have an important topic.
Yeah, we're living in a time, we all know this, it's just starting a conversation where, things have changed in a way where we have to get used to a different pace of life. Due to shipping issues, we can't get products that we're used to getting right away. Due to the crises in the medical profession, many people aren't getting the help that they need. Many people can't get the computers that they need, the printers that they need. Many people are finding that they're going into very hostile environments where there are very different opinions about masks and vaccines. And so people are starting to break down emotionally, which is common sense. You get pushed to your limit, you get frustrated so much. The other day I had 3 computer issues, and one of them kept me on hold with the state of New Mexico for 4 hours. And I actually did the opposite of what I would normally do. Instead of screaming, I was really nice because I felt so bad for this woman. I mean, can you imagine? She got me after 4 hours at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So people are being pushed, and we're seeing this. We're seeing the violence, people starting to do harm against medical workers, restaurant workers. I mean, it's really getting crazy. And it's all about the fact that we really have to acknowledge that we need now a different level of patience. And we need to be able to slow down. So Renee and I were talking about, for those of us who are starting to come at others, and that's the word that people are using a lot. That's the word that people are using who feel like they're being coming, that somebody came on them, and we use it, somebody's coming at me or I'm coming at somebody. It's become a term that people are using throughout the day now. And it's the anger that's coming at us. It's the anger that's coming out of us, and it's the anger that's affecting all of us. And so we were talking about how this is such a big issue that we really have to talk about self-forgiveness.
Absolutely. When you were talking about the computer that you're waiting for, I just looked out over in the harbor, and there's three box boats with those crates where they are shipping. They put them onto the train, and we've been backed up in our harbor now all year long. There's always been 2 to 3 boats out there where there was never any boats before. So one of the things is that there's for some reason there's not the service people on the other end to help unload those boats and those boxes, and we're really kind of in a place where we have to first look at what is so important on that boat box out there that I really needed to buy from Amazon. Or last year when I moved up here to Whidbey, I was going to order furniture, and they said, oh, it'll be about 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. Then I'm there like, well, forget that. I ended up going and getting used things and had my whole house furnished by April. And so we have, first of all, I think we have to learn new ways around the old systems, because the old systems are crumbling.
Right.
And then I find for me that the agitation, the anger, whatever, can creep up on me. I've got to always watch, am I too tired? Like the other day, I really lost my cool publicly, and that doesn't really feel good. I mean, I've been hungover with it all week. And my good friend said, you know, you shouldn't be on the internet when you're that tired, Renee. You had been traveling for 3 weeks, that, and in stressful situations. We buried my sister. I taught a retreat, and I had the first convention in 2 years. So it wasn't like a cruise. It was like really tense. And then, so what happens is you think you're managing, and then something bubbles up from another place where you least expect it.
Yeah, those are, and it's hard when you don't catch yourself. There are times when sanity comes in, and you can take a step back, and you can say, Renee or Sandra, I talk to myself a lot during the day. I need 24-hour therapy, and I'm a therapist, so I'm my best client, and I always have been, actually. And so I talk to myself a lot, and it's like, do you actually have to do this? Do you actually have to put these words out right now? Do you, And so sometimes I can catch myself and go, no, this isn't going to feel good. And sometimes I go, no, it's my truth. I want to put out my truth. But my truth didn't come out in a way that was filled with compassion or kindness. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where we need to learn different forms of communication, of how do we say that we're upset about something, or that things aren't going right, and talk about our frustration, but without coming at others and ruining their experience and their day and their life. And sometimes they deserve it, and sometimes they didn't deserve it. But it's still, if we're looking at trying to bring in more of an energy of kindness and love onto the planet, then we have to make clear choices that, of course, sometimes will fall off the path and lose our temper, but stopping ourselves when we get so triggered, so that we can find a different way to communicate. And I think that we this conversation we've had many, many times, but you can see how exponential the problem is right now. The violence going on simply because people got too overwhelmed and frustrated, period.
Absolutely. One of the things that I noticed is that, like, for me, that there's like certain places where I'm really polite, really considerate. And then there's times like, because they're on the other end of the phone, or, that there's some other place where that's not that face to face, that I was having different standards of how nice I could be and how frustrated it was okay to be and all of that. And I was like, well, that's just not okay. That's just not okay. But the tricky ones are those karmic ones. Those are those blind, insidious ones that just like I poked out my eye last weekend. So the one that came in from the blinded eye, I must say, like the ones that, you're not looking for, you're not prepared for, like after I used to cater, I'd know that 3 days later, I shouldn't be on the phone. I'd have a boss who'd say, Renee, it's the stay in your office kind of day. And yet then you think you've made it through that. And then like something sidewinds in and like a little windstorm and kind of gives you like a surprise attack. And to know that in my own humanness, that I have to forgive myself for being human. Whether this has been a really hard year, as like with the apprenticeship program, I have never taught 75 people for 10 months straight in a row, the group has dwindled some, but that's been a big responsibility. And people project a lot on you too, like that you're sitting on this pedestal and you're supposed to be, and you could probably attest to this, that you're some perfect, that you've got the answers that they're looking for, and that's their projection. That's really hard to live up to.
Yeah, what I train teachers. I started training teachers in 2003, and I'm not done yet. So those of you who are interested, you stay tuned. But one of the biggest teachings I teach in every teacher training is it's not the negative projections that are dangerous to a teacher. It's the positive projections that are dangerous to a teacher, because teachers are human, and it's like Renee was talking about. Her humanness came out, and she got upset publicly, and now she has the hangover from that. And so, in a class, when there's a negative projection on someone, it never feels good. But when there's a positive projection on you, you start forgetting who you are. With the negative projections, you start to look at, is this just their projection on me? Is there some deeper work I need to do on myself? But those positive projections where you're put up on a pedestal, you're basically being put up to be destroyed because, nobody can hold to those. And it's not being your authentic self. When everybody sees you as positive and you take it in. I used to present, back in the old days, there used to be conferences that, big conferences, Omega would put on and other places would put on, and people would come from all over the world, and there'd be millions of presentations and workshops that you can present at. And you could really see how the whole projection thing on teachers got so crazy. So a very, very famous teacher was presenting at one of these conferences. We were actually in Texas. And she asked me if she can come up to my room and have me do a soul retrieval for her after dinner. And I said, sure, of course. And so she came up to my room and we start talking, and she starts telling me everything that's going on in her life. And I said to her, I'm not really sure you need a soul retrieval, but I really think you need a therapist. And her response to me was, and she's no longer here anymore, and she was one of my favorite people. Nobody made me laugh like this woman could make me laugh. And her response to me was, I've sold millions of copies of books. I'm perfect. Look, my audience thinks I'm perfect. What would a therapist do for me? She had actually owned the positive projections and forgot that she was human and that her life was falling apart out of the humanness, not the goddess figure that she had taken on. So, it's really interesting to be around others. And I think the most important point is how we forgive ourselves when we get trapped in certain conversations.
Mm-hmm. And also, I just spent time with my mother. You can always get your spiritual conditioning barometer when you spend time with your mother. If you're like a daughter like me who's had that, kind of, I'm too much like my mother syndrome. I guess that would have to be what it was. So we're very much alike with our cat women and our, living alone type of scenarios. And so the parts of her that I need to forgive in myself in order to have that better relationship with her. And then and then to go and to do that retreat, and which was really we had a wonderful fall retreat, but there was so much opposition getting there that it was like when we got there and there was a breath of fresh wind, it was like, oh. So, I think it goes in waves where you can, there's work to do, and then there's periods of, that you're just in the period of presence. And then there's also the next level of work to do on that forgiveness. And this morning I was doing a meditation before we got on, and that was the work I was trying to do, is like, how do I forgive myself? How do I say, okay, this is human. I tripped up, I fell on my face, and now I'm going to pick myself back up and be okay with that humanness. No matter what I think about the situation, there's a place where there's behaviors that I don't choose to emulate as a role model. And a lot of those have come up this year about, like, okay, as a role model, this doesn't look good on a role model. Like maybe that's my own projection on that, Sandra. Like, this is what a role model's supposed to look like.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because I once did a radio interview with a very famous interviewer back in New York. And he was very confrontive with me. He always, he was never kind. If I said something he didn't like, talk about somebody coming at you, it was unbelievable. He would just go on the attack. So anyway, he asked me this question, which it really boggled my mind. It was so interesting. He said that he had a really good friend who believed that a teacher should never, ever, ever show their human, vulnerable side, ever. What do you think about that? And I talked to him about, I was training teachers at the time, so I talked to him about my teaching of that the positive projections are worse than the negative projections. But I also shared about another teacher I know who's dead, and she was so beloved by me and others. And she never, ever shared her humanness. And what happened was what she did to a whole following of students was she made unrealistic standards of what we could, because I knew her personally, and I knew that she did not live the life that she was teaching. She was sharing high-level principles, but that's not what she was living herself. And so, but everybody thought she was. Everybody thought this was who she was. And we thought that we should be able to be there 24/7. And so basically, I felt that this interviewer and this teacher who I really loved, she did an amazing service while she was alive, also did a teaching that it's okay not to show your real self and make other people feel less than always, because they're always going to be striving for something. And just one more on that. I used to be anorexic, and I used to work at a construction company in San Francisco during that time. And when somebody told me that models were, what's it called when the pictures are fixed? I'm blanking. Airbrushed. When somebody told me that actually the models did not look like how I was trying to make myself look, I mean, it blew up my whole entire world. I was doing so much to look like these people, and they didn't look like that. My teacher didn't live like she was putting out. And in a lot of ways, that's not fair to the public. Because again, it gives us unrealistic expectations of what we're supposed to be able to do. But Renee, I give you an amazing amount of credit for sharing that you lost it publicly and showing your humanness and not getting up here and saying I've never lost it publicly. And so we should never lose it publicly either. You know, you're being a really good role model for us right now, because we're all being pushed beyond our limits. We're all being pushed beyond our limits. And we hope we can take a step back and not say things that we regret. But if we do, to me, it's almost more important to forgive yourself than to apologize to another person, because the judgment on yourself ends up creating harm on every single level, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So it's really important work to be able to forgive ourselves. We're never going to heal. And we're never going to heal the planet if we can't forgive ourselves.
I agree. And one of the things that I came to at the end of it was that, you know, part of the wind work has always been that it's the 10-month program that I lead. It's not about me teaching other people how to do this work. It's me doing the work every year as part of the cycle of change with people like that. And I came to the realization that I'm just two hands in the circle. I'm not in the middle of the circle. I'm not bigger than the circle. I'm just holding hands with everybody else in the circle. And when I realized that took a lot of weight off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, well, we've kind of talked that, but why don't you share with us about where areas in your life that a little self-forgiveness would make the day a little bit brighter for you this week? You know, where are you still holding on to your own? Where are you still beating yourself and judging yourself? And, you know, because those are the projections then we put out in the world. So if we really start looking at where am I still condemning myself, then I can start to think about how does this reflect to the woman I'm talking to on the phone who's not giving me what I want, or the Amazon driver who's not bringing my product, or to the mailman who sent my product back because I complained. I swear they sent my products back because they didn't get it here in the right amount of time and I complained. Next thing I know, it's lost and it went back to the manufacturer. I mean, those are the, like, if that tree falls in the woods today and I don't get the netting for my plant, am I going to hear that sound in 10 years?
Yeah. Yeah, and I keep it, just to let you know, I keep it really simple right now. You know, I've had in the past, you know, I'm addicted to ceremonies. I've done my ceremonies to forgive myself. Now things come, as soon as something comes up, either I'm saying something that's good to myself, that's going to harm myself energetically, the collective energetically, or another person energetically, I just stop and say, I love you to myself. And I just keep it simple. And it's become a habit. And so I'm not as charged. I get charged for moments when I get really overwhelmed, but I just keep repeating, I love you. And before I know it, I'm back on track with the rest of my day. So it doesn't have to be complicated. You can do complicated ceremonies, but it doesn't have to be.
Well, I'm just going to suggest everyone give themselves a little hug right now and, you know, look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you love you, that I love you. And there's nothing like looking in the mirror to know if you really believe it's true or not. So
that's true. Well, blessings, everyone. I love you.
And I love you. And Sandra, I'd love to sit with you. So thank you for your wisdom and for holding such a great space.
Thank you, Renee.